Howdy, boys and girls, and welcome back to week 3 of the 2014 season of the Carla and Crappy Show. I am Crappy. I'm in Pittsburgh. I'm playing slightly hurt today. Over there in Nashville is Carla. Hi, Carla.
Hey, Crappy. How are you?
I've got a little cold, but you know, we're soldiering on. The more troubling thing. I don't think I still recovered from the Big Ten's performance on Saturday. We made such a big deal about this being about being put up or shut up, and apparently the Big Ten just needs to shut the hell up for a while because that was awful.
Yeah, all the way around, across the board, just absolutely abysmal. There aren't even words, really. No words. It's yeah.
I went as I mentioned before. I went to Ohio State, Virginia Tech, and that. It's frustrating. It never really felt out of reach, but it always sort of felt out of reach. You just didn't feel like there was enough of an offense with the difficulties the offensive line was having that Ohio State would be able to come back. And I remember looking at the scoreboards and seeing, well, I mean, obviously Notre Dame and Michigan, that one was obvious pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But Michigan State and Oregon and halftime score, and like, okay. You know Oregon's going to score a little bit in the second half, but you didn't think that Michigan State would only come up with 3 points after halftime. And that's so those 3 just crushing losses, and add to that the fact that Northern Illinois, a MAC school, probably laid claim to being the best college football team in the state of Illinois. I know Illinois is still undefeated, but them beating the Huskies beating Northwestern is kind of embarrassing as well. So that brings us to actually our first game. Old school college football fans who remember the heyday of Eastern college football, which 4,000 years ago, whatever that was, would have to be tickled with the top of the standings of the Big East, or excuse me, the Big Ten Eastern division, Maryland, Rutgers, and Penn State. All sitting there 2-0, and that's where we begin the first Big Ten game for the two of the new kids. Rutgers goes to Penn State on Saturday. That game, Penn State is a 3.5-point favorite at home. What do you see there?
This is always one of those games that we used to laugh about. You're talking about the old Eastern Eastern stuff. When it was Penn State and that was always the joke. Like, what are we gonna do? Go see Rutgers? Like that was. I mean, they were the other end, and now all of a sudden, hi, they're in the conference.
Yes.
This is suddenly a conference game. Last week, I was nervous heading into the Akron game.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State didn't do a whole heck of a lot in the first half to make me less nervous.
Sure.
There's still no running game at all. The offensive line is still not in good shape. They're young, they're learning, but it's just not where it needs to be. Hackenberg is kind of making life on his own by scrambling out of the pocket. And he's thriving really nicely in the hurry-up offense that Franklin has kind of brought into town. But other than that, you're still a little bit nervous about this. So I had to do a little bit more research on Rutgers to figure out who had they beaten in their first 2 games? Is it 2 cupcakes? But not really. They went out and beat Washington State, which was a pretty impressive win. And we're going to find out if Penn State can really play rush defense, because they've got a pretty good back by the name of Paul James. I can't read my own scribbling. Yeah, Paul James. Went for $173 against Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's nothing to scoff at, and they've got a decent quarterback to back him up in Gary Nova, who had a decent week last week against Howard. We're still talking about Howard.
We're still talking about Howard.
Howard just won't go away.
Maybe Howard's going to follow us through September, and then we can stop with Howard for a while.
That lingers, right? Howard is the cupcake that lingers. That Howard makes me a girl flounder. I don't know, guys. I'm grasping at straws at this point, but. So Rutgers does have a pretty impressive win on its resume. You can say that Penn State has kind of waffled a little bit. Here's the key stat in all of this, though. All-time, Penn State and Rutgers in the all-time series, Penn State leads the series 22-2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For that reason, I see this as a Penn State win. I, again, think it's going to be another uncomfortable week in Happy Valley because I think Rutgers actually based on what I've seen, has the potential of being a pretty decent team this year. But I think we're really going to find out if Penn State can play rush defense for sure. But I think they're going to pull it out.
Yeah. I did not watch it live. I watched most of the Rutgers Washington State game as a replay, thanks to the Big Ten Network, and was impressed. They are not a cupcake walking into the league for the first time this year. I wonder about. Well, both teams have some motivation here. Rutgers, it's their first game of the conference. You're certainly playing against a team that has been the big kid on the block if you're talking about Eastern college football since time began. So they have that. I wonder about the motivation that Penn State suddenly has with lifting of sanctions, postseason eligibility. I suspect there will be a little extra juice in Beaver Stadium for the fans and for the team as well, because suddenly you've got something to play for besides just a number at the end of the season. And I think for that reason, the things that you mentioned are all concerns, and 3.5 point favorite, 3.5 point line is a tight one, and it's tight for a reason. But I think for those reasons, Penn State is going to get this done. Again, tight game because Rutgers is no joke, but Penn State's going to win this one on Saturday.
Luke Ficken, we're counting on you.
Oh God, please. Okay. Next, we go to Norman, Oklahoma, where the Tennessee Volunteers visit the Sooners. Hey, Carla, what team comes to mind if you're talking about teams that might even be younger than Ohio State?
That would be UT.
That would be Tennessee. That would be Tennessee. How is that going to go for those kids when they roll into Norman?
Oh gosh, it's kind of sad living in Tennessee. You'd have to appreciate the optimism in Knoxville right now.
Sure.
Right. And I think they have a reason to be optimistic. I don't think they have necessarily a reason to be optimistic this season, but I think the pieces are in place. They started. Their 21 true freshmen saw playing time in week 1. That's insane.
That is insane.
That's absolutely insane. So their offensive line is incredibly young. Yes, they've had 2 pretty solid wins to start the season. Louisiana Tech, Tulsa, or not. I'm sorry, that's Oklahoma. Tennessee played Utah State, and has had some success. Let's see. Running game is an issue with them. Their running back, Jalen Hurd is kind of their lead running back. And combined in 2 weeks, he's only had 100 and some yards, 112 yards. That would be great if it was 1 game, but that was 2. So yeah, there's still a lot of concerns offensively for the Vols, and the Sooners have to be feeling pretty good right now, right? After the Big Ten kind of blew itself up last week. Oklahoma's sitting pretty out in Norman.
Yeah.
And they've got themselves a darn good football team that likes to play defense. I saw this stat, and I was like, whoa, this is incredible. Oklahoma has outscored its opponents 62-3 in the first half in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Did they play Howard? Have they played Howard this year?
No, they're the ones that played Louisiana Tech and Tulsa, because I read my notes wrong.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah. Can you tell it's late? Yeah. So Oklahoma's a darn good football team. I'm really happy they're optimistic in Knoxville, and I think they really do have a reason to be optimistic probably next season. I think they really could be a serious contender, but this could get ugly pretty quickly. I don't see this really even being close. Maybe they keep it close in the first half, but no, the Sooners win this one and win it easily.
Mm-hmm. This is, what I would say to offer perhaps advanced condolences to any Tennessee folks who might be watching this. In 2005, Ohio State had a very young team, including a young quarterback, Troy. His name escapes me at some point. He spent a year learning on the job, along with a lot of other folks, including an ugly evening at Penn State and during that season. what Tennessee folks, what you want to get out of this game is some experience, playing in a very hostile environment, playing against a very good team, hopefully keeping everyone healthy, and taking some lessons back to Knoxville, because that's pretty much all you're going to be taking back to Knoxville. This game is going to be a solid win for the Sooners at home. Last game we're going to talk about, Georgia travels to South Carolina. South Carolina's got to be feeling a little desperate here, because another SEC loss pretty much means their season's done. You know, Citrus Bowl, or you'd have to be happy with getting that with 2 conference losses. How do you see this one going?
Georgia is a scary team right now. I watched that game.
Georgia may be the best team that I've seen so far this year.
Yeah, because I watched the second half of that game against Clemson, and it just that was ridiculously scary. Not only is Todd Gurley ridiculously fast and an outstanding runner, but he's got 3 other backs that they can throw in there, fresh legs on every play if they really wanted to. And the problem for South Carolina is the fact they're catching Oklahoma before the injury bug, or I'm sorry, they're catching Georgia before the injury bug strikes them. That always seems to be the problem with Georgia, is that they get these good players in, and one of them gets hurt, and it really kind of puts a hamper on the offense. But second week of the season, they're coming off of a bye week, so everybody is still healthy, and that's downright scary. Not just offensively, but defensively. That pass rush against Clemson was ridiculous. You know, Clemson couldn't do anything really in the second half, and Georgia kind of ran away with it. And you've got a South Carolina team that went out in week 1 and just got their rear ends handed to them by A&M. I mean, that wasn't pretty at all. And then this past week, they got the win, but it wasn't pretty. You know, I mean, and to an East Carolina team East Carolina is predicted to do well in Conference USA, but they're a Conference USA team. And South Carolina trailed to them early in that game. I don't know. The one thing, and I will admit, I stole this from Braden Gall, who posted this on Twitter. But this is the only thing that I think South Carolina can hold its hat on, is that in the last 9 games that Georgia has traveled to South Carolina to play, they have averaged just a little bit more than 13 points per game.
Okay.
They with a 5-4 record. So Georgia leads 5-4 in the last 9 games at South Carolina. You know, traditionally they've had a little bit of a struggle there. I just don't see that this time. I think this is another game that could get ugly. Especially based on what I saw against Clemson, and we thought that game was going to be competitive, and it was just ugly in the second half. I think we have a great first half of football, and I think in the second half Georgia just puts it away with that run game. I think this one easily covers the spread and then some.
I didn't even see. I said Georgia's 5-point favorite. I don't think I noted that before. I would look for a better game than 52-28. Which is what Carolina managed to scrape by against Texas A&M when they hosted Texas A&M. I mean, for the reason that this is the season for them. It's awfully early to say that, but 2 conference losses, you know, means you're playing a bowl game that you're not exactly happy to go to when you had the expectations that the Gamecocks did. 5-point favorite. It could be that tight. I think just waves of running backs in the second half, as you said, that ultimately could make a big difference. So whether or not the final score is 5 points or a little bit more, I don't think South Carolina. This isn't it. This is not the year. And if they got hammered by A&M. They're not going to beat Georgia, even at home. So I see a win for the Bulldogs. That's it.
It's kind of a light week.
Really. It is kind of a light week. I hope I didn't jinx anything by deciding that covering Ohio State versus Kent was not necessary.
Kent State is a bad football team. Your Buckeyes win easily this week.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Can I throw one at you?
Sure,
I just
do.
remember that this game is happening,
Please do.
so I'll put you on the spot this week.
Howard. It's a Howard game. Please.
It's a Howard game.
Really?
I should go look to see who Howard is playing this week.
I know. I've just thought of that too.
How about a little UCLA, Texas?
Ooh. And that's a neutral site, correct? That's in Dallas.
Neutral site in name only. Yes.
Yeah. Let's go with Texas. There. A big win as the program gets started again. Texas is not short on talent, and frankly, UCLA, one of the more overrated teams. Going from preseason rankings to looking at what they've done on the field. I believe they've gotten the wins that they. I believe they've gotten their wins, but have not looked all that good. And I think that's a prime spot for a team like Texas to get started with. So, yeah, Longhorns.
Texas needs the win because they're a mess right now.
Yeah.
Charlie Strong did the same thing when he went to Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
That he went in and cleaned house, and that's what Texas is in the middle of, and it's really kind of an unsettled situation. Texas needs to win this game. I still think UCLA manages to pull it off.
Okay.
If this was a more neutral site game, I would say UCLA would definitely win, but the fact that it's in Arlington,
yeah,
I think that's going to help the Longhorns because it's going to be obviously a very biased crowd at a neutral site. But I still think UCLA gets the win. The Pac-12 needs them to win.
Yes.
Just to kind of keep their, like I said, Pac-12 is going to beat up on each other. So the Pac-12 needs this win against the Big 12 team, even if it's a Texas team that's a little bit down.
Okay. So. Guys, Carla, enjoy the games this weekend. Guys, you do the same, and we will see you back here next week. Thanks, Carla. See you later.
Thanks. See you next week.
Bye.
Now I can't hear it right.